Have you ever felt targeted in Overwatch? I mean, don't get me wrong, I understand that some targets are simply more enticing than others. A good player knows when to prioritize the carry, and as such, we have no shortage of reasons to be focused. Or, at least I would love to believe that's the case. Reasons for being hard focused span about as wide as the ocean, and I feel like all of us have been on the receiving end of a solo ult at least once. If you enjoy playing a character, then there will be somebody who absolutely hates your guts for doing so. It doesn't matter if all you do is vibing in your backline, the haters will find you and they won't stop until you eat dirt. And if you think that any of my teammates will do as much as glancing in my general direction while I'm getting spawn camped, then you and I must have been playing very different versions of Overwatch. But you know who does go out of their way to support me? Our sponsor for today, Surfshark VPN. Much like there are many arbitrary reasons to be hard focused in Overwatch, there are also such roadblocks on the internet. I mean, hey, I'm not here to tell you how to live your digital life, but let's just say that there's a lot of people out there interested in your data, and if you care about online privacy, having a VPN should definitely be something you consider. From industry-leading encryption, DNS leak protection, and a very strict no-logs policy, you can be certain that Surfshark VPN is a great fit for your security needs. And since the world is slowly opening up with worldwide travel once again becoming available, you don't want to be caught off guard on any shoddy airport Wi-Fi. Speaking of different places in the world, did you know that online streaming services like Netflix have completely different catalogs depending on where you live? Nothing sucks more than not being able to join your friends talking about that awesome new show just because it's not available in your country. So join the conversation and save some money while doing so. You can get 83% off your subscription and 3 extra months for free just by visiting my link in the description below and using promo code Terios. So what are you waiting for? Unlock a more secure and open internet for yourself today. Thanks a bunch to Surfshark VPN for sponsoring today's video, and now, onto our standard programming. Now, what makes today's episode special is that this wasn't just a hunch that made me feel like I was getting focused down. Being a support player is reason enough to end up on the chopping block, but getting actual confirmation that somebody was going out of their way to eliminate you is simply something else. And trust me, confirmation will come. I would soon come to regret my choice of hero, but not as much as I would regret that time of day at which I decided to play. That's right, my friends, like any sane, stable human being who values their sanity, I decided to queue up for competitive play in Overwatch at 2 in the morning. I would say that the most recent heatwave was the reason for my inability to sleep, but alas, if one wants to acquire the content, one must be willing to pay the price for it. And pay the price I would, because the red team had a hatred in their heart that they were keen to teach me about. But this won't be a round of competitive play without a Smurf Doomfist One Trick trying to break the world record for being the first one to be turned into pavement. It does amaze me that the entire team turned around to help the backline, but I guess that shows us that Doomfist is not meant to spearhead a push. I sincerely wish that this was the only problem we had to deal with, but when I saw a Zarya bubbled monkey jump towards my team, I knew that we were on borrowed time. It was immediately apparent that the red team displayed a level of individual skill as well as team-wide coordination that made us pale by comparison. After having deleted our second DPS, Dave the Winston player jumped on my noggin without even having made visual contact. First the Discord orb follow-up, and now this? Clearly these guys were taking this match much more seriously than us. And here's my Doomfist proving that point yet again. I want to say that there was a valiant effort made to stop the red team from securing the first checkpoint, but really, their victory was quite unceremonious. Besides me sniping their Hanzo, there weren't a lot of eliminations to speak of, though my DPS were very eager to change that. As a matter of fact, regrouping appeared to be a foreign concept to them as my Tracer boldly tried to secure a pick. But one does not simply engage 1v6 and come out of it alive. A sleep dart would seal their fate once again and put us on the back foot. By the time the rest of our team caught up to the front line, the cart had made a considerable amount of progress, and the red team was eager to keep it that way. Between the Zarya bubble and Winston's barrier, I was having a hard time finding an opening to use my abilities, but nothing could prepare me for how aggressively they were trying to secure the second point. I didn't think much of the first elimination I suffered, but getting solo grabbed and dove by a Nano Winston definitely made me feel targeted. But I rest assured knowing that at least my Tracer was having as bad of a time as me. Oh yeah, and I guess Doomfist has also never heard of the concept of pattern recognition. Now, as bad as this game is looking so far, and as much as I had long since accepted my fate, Yami was not done fighting yet. I honestly had no idea where they were pulling all that determination from, but their Primal Rage baited out enough cooldowns for the rest of our team to start cleaning house. By the time I sat my butt on the payload, the damage was already done, and me not having seen what happened at the time really wondered why the red team just randomly abandoned the payload. But a break this was not. Being at a disadvantage hasn't stopped either of our teams from engaging anyway, anyway, and as such, Kirik could celebrate his first revenge kill against Ana. It must have felt great to get back on them after having been slept so often, but as I said, bleeding manpower is not going to cause the red team to back out. And why would they? For every elimination we obtained, they collected 2, and it wasn't long until I found myself forced to back out. But somebody had set their sights on chasing me. Oh, you're approaching me? Instead of running away, you're coming to get Zenyatta diffed? Well, be my guest, Igris. Your team might be better than mine, but that does not mean you stand a chance against me. And if you think that we've been doing a bit too well for ourselves, don't worry, because our Doomfist agreed. Rather than actually playing the video game, they decided to stand still in the middle of combat to type some dumb nonsense into the chat, all the while getting shot by the opposition. The rest of my team had to pay the price for trying to save them, and this was what ultimately sealed our fate. We may have been able to bleed more time off the clock thanks to our spawn advantage, but sacrificing ourselves for the sake of a Doomfist One Trick gave the red team enough momentum to take the payload all the way to the end. Maybe queuing it during the morning really was a mistake, but that's the wonderful thing about Overwatch. When you play the game at absolute degenerate times, you never know what happens next, and as it turned out, that phenomenon could also work in my favor. After such a striking defeat, you can be dang sure that I was not hopeful for a good outcome to this match, though there was something that stuck out as weird to me. I mean, a Winston prioritizing the diving of low mobility supports is not anything to write home about, but getting double solo ulted was something of a special case. Though when their Zenyatta arbitrarily tried to chase me down using Transcendence, I knew something was off. These guys were focusing me. I really don't know what I did to them to deserve that kind of treatment. I mean, heck, they were absolutely stomping us even without them going out of the way to take me out. But something told me that I should spend the first couple seconds of the next round in spawn. I was mentally prepared for the worst possible outcome at that point, but there was one good thing about having low expectations. Any positive turn of events is going to end up being a pleasant surprise. One such positive turn of events was the fact that Kirik not only sought to McCree, but they also made it their mission to keep the enemy Tracer at bay to protect our backline. I can guarantee that I was definitely in voice chat and my teammates were definitely not saying anything, but for some reason, we decided to play a bit more like a team. But it wasn't just a more cohesive approach to our team play that made the difference. Yami switching to Orisa was putting a big wrench in the red team's plan because suddenly they couldn't just freely dive whoever they wanted. Yami kept forcing them to waste cooldowns, which gave the rest of us a lot more space to breathe. Suddenly it wasn't all that easy for them to punish our Doomfist anymore because they had to invest resources prior to them engaging. And with Ana and I being able to do our jobs uninterrupted, we could also put in the extra legwork to keep Shreddies alive. But we weren't the only ones enjoying the fact that we don't get eliminated off cooldown. Kirik was determined to prove how versatile of a DPS they are, first playing the bodyguard for their supports before going on the offensive to give the red team a run for their money. But with our McCree occupied, somebody else had to make sure that our Ana did not get picked off. When I realized that they were getting hard scoped on by a Widowmaker while being dove by a Tracer, I decided to put my body on the line to keep them in the game. My valiant sacrifice would be rewarded with a first point cap, as well as the immediate annihilation of the enemy Widowmaker that took me out. Truly, if I didn't know any better, I would assume that I'm playing 2 completely separate quick play matches rather than a switching side competitive round. Our performance was completely unlike before, and I really couldn't tell you why that is. I mean, granted, Shreddies was feeding as hard as ever, just that now we could keep them alive while doing so. Needless to say that with my Ana on the card and me being on my way back from spawn, there was nobody who could save them now, though a pick on the enemy Baptiste may have been worth it. Losing a support can be devastating, so the best course of action for many flankers is trying to equalize that pick. Being a seasoned support player, of course I was aware of that. Perching up on high ground, I was waiting for them to try and go for my Ana. They had shown themselves capable of handling a Tracer as long as I provided orbs of Discord and Harmony, but eventually I wanted to get a bit more personal. Of course, there was more than one flanker to deal with now. The enemy team was running a Doomfist as well, but Junkertown is one of those maps that I played often enough to know what to expect. Sleepy Dog found themselves unable to confirm any eliminations in light of my Transcendence, allowing our push to continue without any casualties to boot. The red team was getting desperate. More ultimates would be used in an attempt to stop our advance, but all that paled in front of our overwhelming damage. Realizing there was a little they could achieve, Igris was trying very hard to take me out before inevitably biting the dust. But Dave too had his sights on me specifically, which as well would lead to his downfall. I really don't know why I was getting targeted as if I kicked their puppy, but that hyperfixation of theirs was definitely not doing them any favors. The rest of my team was putting on a stellar performance, and if I was on the red team, I'd worry about that first. Though granted, it was that turning of events that gave me the confidence to push up aggressively and join some of my comrades on high ground, something that would soon prove to be a mistake as I whiffed my shot on a low HP Doomfist. Them being double pocketed was a bit cringe, but alas, I should should definitely have known better. It was in part thanks to my feeding, as well as some hero swaps on the enemy team, that our glorious attack would finally come to an end. It was like we were playing Jenga and pulled the wrong piece. One mistake led to a whole lot of trouble and nobody wanted to pick up the pieces. As I returned from spawn, watching my teammates get chased down, I knew that I had to atone for my sins. I didn't let my Ana fall through the hands of that Tracer yet, and I was not about to start. Clearly, having gotten rolled by my superior intellect before, I had put the fear of God in their hearts as I watched them actively try to disengage me. But I only had so much time to play with them before I decided that my services would best be used elsewhere. Of course, my teammates had no idea that their Tracer was still alive, surprising Shreddy's mere moments after leaving the spawn. Ana and I were left once again to stop the spawn camp, but rather than trying to regroup, we figured that engaging even harder was the only way to win this game. And with a nano-boosted whole hog bulldozing our way forward, we had not only the surprise factor on our side, but also the brute force necessary to make a dent in that double barrier composition of theirs. Which, by the way, if you run double barrier in your games, you're cringe and I don't like you. Many Q buttons will be pressed in retaliation, but this was our game for the taking. Transcendence will keep my teammates in the game, and I figured if these guys are so keen on killing me, then they can come and get me. But to understand how much of an impact that play made, we need to rewind. Because as soon as that fight broke out, Kirik decided to go on the flank. A flank that, thanks to Blizzard's broken audio, would go completely unnoticed for way longer than it had any right to. I mean, seriously, considering how much coordination these guys had put on display during the first round, it was mind-boggling how seemingly no one called out the fact that Kirik was farming eliminations completely uninterrupted. And when the time came that I yeeted myself into the backline, their entire lineup was already ground into a pace, with their tanks being none the wiser. I mean, granted, Junkertown is just 2 CP on wheels, meaning we still had to eliminate them 5 times over on the final stretch to claim victory. But the fact that a seemingly dysfunctional team managed to get this far in the first place was a miracle. And the truly miraculous thing about this was that we didn't only take the card all the way to the end, we did so with an even better time bank than the red team. This was anyone's game at this point, but maybe I could continue to make use of the fact that the enemy team really wanted to take me out. With a surprise victory for the blue team, I suddenly found myself completely rejuvenated. Late night Overwatch really is full of surprises, and it was my belief that if I want to keep that streak up, we had to keep the surprises coming. A tactical swap to Baptiste was my solution to this problem. Surely they would never expect me to swap off my one trick, and as such, it would give us the upper hand. Except they were definitely unimpressed by my swap and absolutely rolled us. As much as I would love to lament what happened, unlike Blizzard Entertainment, I'm not planning to sell you the exact same content twice. Just like before, the red team's coordination had overwhelmed us, and without a harmony orb keeping Shreddies alive, we found ourselves at a constant 5v6. It wasn't until we were just shy of the final checkpoint that we got what could be described as a cohesive team fight, by which point we had already been knee-deep in trouble. Of course, I immediately swapped back to Zenyatta once I used my ultimate, hoping that playing far in the back would entice the red team to overextend. For the off chance that they had a change of heart, of course my prime directive was trying to get my ultimate, and any serious attempt at winning this game had to include me keeping my Ana alive. We started to stack up eliminations as the red team felt the overbearing weight of the overtime mechanic, and lo and behold, look who just decided to dive me. And I know what you're thinking. Surely the enemy Winston getting off the card, completely ignoring any of my teammates, and wasting one of the best stalling ultimates in the game when attacking me was just an oversight, right? But that's where you're wrong. Because when I confronted him about his misplay by means of toxic commentary, I got the following response: I don't care, I got you. Having finally gotten definitive proof that Dave was indeed willing to throw the game just to eliminate me, I could only come to the following conclusion. He must have been in a pre-mate with at least some of these people on his team, which would explain why they have all that synergy, and they immediately realized that I was the most competent player in the lobby, causing them to focus me down. Had I finally cracked the code, or was I just feeding into my 2:30 AM delusions? I guess we will never know for sure. What I did know was that swapping off my one trick was definitely not the play, and now that I found out about Dave's dirty little secret, I had ever the more reason to want to win. Despite what I said about Shreddies, I couldn't help but admit that they were the key to victory. An explosive pick-based playstyle is exactly what we need if we want to have any hope of moving the card even close to where the red team got theirs. And as it turned out, the Doomfist in question was extremely ready to provide exactly that. Within the blink of an eye, Shreddies confirmed an elimination on the enemy McCree, displaying yet unprecedented levels of patience, and it was that patience that allowed them to wait just long enough to send another unfortunate soul back to their spawn. But don't forget that every team has access to the same roster of heroes. If Doomfist is the key to victory for us, he might also be the key for the red team. But but thankfully I could eliminate Sleepy Dog before they did enough damage to put a dent to our advance. It's funny how Doomfist counters Zenyatta into oblivion, but yet the two of them make such a great combo. My Harmony Orb in combination with his shield gain gave him just enough survivability to boldly follow up on my Discord Orbs and annihilate the opposition before they could stop him. But a Harmony Orb only sticks around for so long when your target decides to break LOS, and fighting a high charge Zarya while already low on HP definitely makes for an uphill battle. But none of that was enough to break our iron will. Any retaliation sides of the red team was dealt with expertly by operating under the assumption that if we don't know what we are doing, then how can the enemies possibly prepare for it? While my DPS were cleaning up the flanks, I was masterfully navigating the treacherous waters of this engagement. I knew that the red team was forced to choose between either focusing on me or trying to stop the coward, but no matter the choice, I always had an answer for whatever they tried to do. The enemy team was obviously struggling to find out what demands their attention. Would eliminating me help them win the game, or can they only win the game by giving up on eliminating me? While they debated amongst themselves, the rest of my team was absolutely free to do whatever they wanted, leading into the final stretch. And at long last, we did it. We secured 2 checkpoints with about 40 seconds left on the clock. We would not fall victim to the overtime mechanic the way they did previously, and all that was left to do was making the final incision. And this was it. A good player does not demand a pocket, but a good teammate knows to make the rest of their team shine. Ultimately, the key to victory was not to do more damage or get more kills, but to make it so my feeding teammates were just a little more difficult to punish. I never ended up finding out why Dave and friends were so keen on focusing me. Maybe it was my hero of choice, maybe they were just having a laugh, or maybe it was a late night brain affecting them more than is healthy. But my suffering would come to an end at 2:34 AM, after which I was happy to go to bed. And hey, if you were happy to watch this episode, then do let me know by dropping me a like on your way out. Consider subscribing if you want to see more, and to definitely ring that bell icon to not miss out on my next upload. May RNGesus look favorably upon your queues, my friends, and until next time, peace.